Hey guys, it's Gregor, and welcome to the first in the series of World Warships guides that I plan on putting out every once in a while. Think of this as a test run for ship reviews to come in the future. A bit of history behind them, what they're good at and not so good at, and how to make use of them. The American cruisers Phoenix and Omaha are two very popular and very similar light cruisers that excel at gunning down pesky destroyers and similarly armored warships. There's a reason that the Phoenix and the Omaha are such similar vessels. The Phoenix class was a ship that never got laid down in a port. Rather, it was the precursor to the Omaha class on paper, a framework for what would be built on later. The design principle behind these two ships remains the same, that of a high-speed scout cruiser with torpedoes. So when you talk about the design of the Phoenix class, you're really talking about the Omaha ultimately. Omaha-class cruisers were built following America's involvement in World War I to provide the U.S. Navy with the ability to provide information regarding the enemy's position and to deny the enemy information on their own position, effectively acting as a scout ship that could screen for the fleet they were a part of as well. To this end, it was built in lieu of how the Brits built their very own Centaur class, commissioned in 1916. Omaha was commissioned in 1923, a light cruiser with turret-mounted guns as opposed to casement mounts. It would take a few versions of the ship's hull to perfect the design. The Omaha class was the oldest cruiser class the U.S. Navy had in service at the start of World War II, and was a real old-school workhorse. 10 of them were built. They spent most of their time in secondary theaters as patrol ships, convoy escorts, and artillery ships. None of the 10 Omaha-class ships made were sunk over the course of the war, proving to be fairly tough vessels, even if they didn't do a lot of frontline fighting. Due to their age, the ships were all decommissioned and scrapped within months of the end of the war in the Pacific, with the exception of USS Milwaukee, which was given to the Soviet Navy in '44 and named Murmansk, to be given back to the US and scrapped in '49. Alright, so how does that help you play the ship? Well, since the Omaha wasn't used to brawl with other, more heavily armored warships, you should probably take that as a cue not to do the same. A lot of people complain about both of these ships. They go onto Warships Today and look at the win rates for both of them and then promptly go, "No!" But if you're not completely stupid, you'll realize that this mindset also overlooks the fact that the premium Marblehead and Murmansk, which are essentially the same as the Omaha, both have pretty good win rates. Are they difficult ships to make work? That's interpretive, and the answer to that question is largely irrelevant. All I'm presenting this information for is to demonstrate that you can make the Omaha and the Phoenix work well, in my honest opinion. The difference between the Omaha and the Phoenix themselves is a little bit negligible. Phoenix has casemates, and the Omaha has turrets, and a little more AA, and a little bit better firing range, as well as a catapult to launch a floatplane with. There are 3 different hulls for the Phoenix, and 3 for the Omaha to research. I upgraded my fire control systems first when I was progressing through them, but you can really approach it any way you wish to do so. Both ships carry 152mm guns, or 6 inchers as labeled by the Brits and the Americans, with a fairly fast rate of fire and the ability to light large, well-armored battleships on fire repeatedly, as well as eviscerate smaller ships like destroyers with ease. Torpedo armament on both ships also consists of 2 triple-tube torpedo launchers placed on port and starboard sides each. The torpedoes are fine. They both have a range of 5.5 kilometers and can be used to finish off enemies that get too close. Speed is comparable to other light cruisers, with the Phoenix having a top speed of 35 knots and the Omaha 34 knots. And so, much of the advice that I give to play the Omaha is comparable in usage to the Phoenix, if not identical. So I'm going to talk about these ships interchangeably. The Omaha-class cruiser wasn't ever sent to duke it out with enemy capital ships. Comparably, this is the main weakness of these vessels. They're very easily penned and citadeled at close range by just about everything except destroyers. Conversely, that's where a good deal of the ship's strength lies. Both of these vessels carry a large amount of fast-firing guns. When you load up HE and fire a full broadside at a destroyer, they're going to melt like butter. A fitting role for a vessel built as a scout and screening cruiser. How do you play these ships then? Well, you respect your point in the food chain. The ship is maneuverable enough and fast enough to intercept most kinds of destroyers, and can evade their torpedoes relatively easily if you're paying attention, especially with the hydroacoustic search ability available for both of these ships. But while these ships are better at dancing with destroyers than other cruisers, they're still cruisers and won't take a lot of torpedo hits. So you ought to be cautious of ships with rapidly reloading torpedoes like the Izyaslav and make sure that they don't get too close to you. Comparably, Japanese destroyers are going to try to stay as far away from you as possible to take advantage of their long-range torpedoes, since their lack of guns is their main weakness, and American destroyers may try to whittle you down with their guns. Be cautious of that. You don't want to get too close to these ships so that they can melt you away with their torpedoes, but when you're at mid-range and able to predict the movement of those torpedoes, it's relatively easy to take these ships down with a few well-placed salvos. As for other cruisers, you want to be very cautious of high-caliber cruisers like the Furutaka and the Kirov, which will citadel you to death if you expose your full broadside to them. Other light cruisers with gun caliber comparable to yours, well, you'll just have to outplay them. Remember that you can easily citadel very lightly armored cruisers like the Kuma with AP shells. As for battleships, if absolutely necessary, you can focus fire these vessels from a distance and harass them with HE shells. Keep setting them on fire if you're able to, just make sure that they don't get a good bead on you, or you'll pay for it quickly. The Phoenix and the Omaha are pretty easy ships to optimize. As far as upgrades are concerned, I'm not too keen on spending money on mid-tier ships for such reasons, but if it appeals to you, this is what I would recommend. Phoenix has 2 upgrade slots. I would recommend main armaments modification and magazine modification as good options that I'd take over auxiliary armaments. Not getting blown the hell up from a stray citadel pen is nice, but if you're careful, you can get away with main armaments to just toughen up the ship a little bit. I think using the Phoenix and the Omaha the way I suggested makes you vulnerable to enemy destroyers, which exclusively use HE rounds and torpedoes, so damage control systems modification is my favored use of the 3 other upgrades available in this slot as well. You can carry over these same upgrades to the Omaha if you wish, which can then mount another set of upgrades. I prefer main battery modification 2 then, which allows you to get out more rounds on target and makes it easier to track fast-moving ships with a faster loading time and traverse speed. As far as captain skills are concerned, if you're just grinding down the line, you probably won't go too far into the skill tree here, but I would recommend situation awareness, expert marksman, and vigilance as a starting point. In conclusion, the Phoenix and the Omaha are 2 ships that in my opinion aren't particularly bad ships. If anything, I think they're just used incorrectly. It's not an apex predator like the Furutaka, and it's not supposed to be. It occupies an interesting niche as a destroyer hunter and escort ship for friendly capitals, and it fills that niche particularly well, so take advantage of it. Use your hydroacoustic search when screening for your team, or when you come across enemy destroyers, aim your guns, and just keep on clicking. And in any event, with those torpedoes of yours, you can take on a wider range of opponents than you might initially think. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more World of Warships content like this in the future, and give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, it really does go a long way. I've got my eyes on the upcoming German battleships right now and can't wait to get my hands on them. Until then, I'm Gregor, and as one from Omaha might put it, I'm definitely moving to Phoenix at some point. Thanks so much for watching.